I was just thinking about this really strange thing so many of us do with our to-do lists or, really with our lives in general. Like, say you have this big idea, like a business idea sitting in a notebook somewhere, or maybe a new workout habit you keep putting off, or even just a tough conversation you're avoiding.
Right. We all have those.
Exactly. And we just sit on it because there's this very quiet but like incredibly convincing voice in our heads saying, oh, I'm just not ready yet.
Yes. It is a profound mental block, honestly. We convince ourselves that we just need to feel a bit more secure or, a bit more prepared before we actually take the leap.
Right, like we need permission from our own feelings.
Exactly. And we think we are protecting ourselves by doing that. But what is actually happening in the mind is that we're trapping ourselves in this state of permanent hesitation.
And that's exactly what I want us to get into today because it's such a universal trap. We're looking at this whole concept of how confidence actually works, which completely upended how I view my own habits.
It really changes everything once you see it.
It does, because we are going to map out why waiting to, feel confident is actually a biological trap. And we'll talk about the real sequence the mind uses to build lasting capability.
The whole problem really starts with our misunderstanding of sequence,
Hmm.
like the order of operations.
Right.
Most people operate under the assumption that the formula goes like this. First, you get the skill. Second, you feel confident. And then third, you take action.
Yes, that feels so logical.
It feels logical, but the way human psychology actually works is the exact opposite.
Wait, really? The exact opposite?
Yes, the action has to come first. But many of us fall into this trap of waiting for the feeling. It's a deeply ingrained belief that an internal feeling of readiness simply must arrive before we allow an external action to happen.
I mean, I know if you're listening to this right now and you feel stuck on a project, it's so easy to just blame yourself, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You think, oh, I'm just lazy or I lack discipline. But it's not a lack of discipline at all, is it?
No, not at all. You are just running a faulty, outdated set of rules for how confidence is built. People assume the feeling is a requirement.
But what makes this so tricky, I think, is how it disguises itself. Because when I do this, it rarely feels like procrastination.
What does it feel like for you?
It feels like responsibility. Like
Yeah.
it tells you that you're just being thorough. You're reading one more article or, I don't know, buying one more software tool.
Or watching one more tutorial video.
Yes, exactly.
The mind is incredibly efficient at self-deception. From a basic survival standpoint, the brain wants to conserve energy and avoid the pain of failure.
So it tricks you.
Exactly. Taking one more online course feels like progress. Reading one more book on leadership feels like you are doing the hard work.
Wow. Yeah.
But unless that preparation crosses the line into physical action, the mind is just simulating progress. It's a rehearsal that never ends.
I was looking at my own habits with this, and it feels exactly like, well, I call it productivity doom scrolling.
That is a brilliant way to describe it.
Are we literally just tricking ourselves into feeling busy without risking anything real?
That is exactly what is happening. When people are productivity doom scrolling, they're getting this tiny little spark of satisfaction from the idea of preparation.
Right. That little reward feeling.
But they are completely avoiding the vulnerability of actually doing the thing. They stay in the safe zone. And the harsh reality is that preparation alone, no matter how much you do, never triggers true confidence.
So if reading and researching don't give us confidence, where does the mind actually get it from? Like, how does this whole loop of feeling capable actually start?
It is built primarily through one specific thing: tiny direct proof, a small personal win.
Okay, piney proof.
Yes, it's not built through positive thinking or reading perfectly written guides. It is small, direct, personal evidence that you yourself can actually execute a task.
So you have to literally do a small version of the thing.
You have to act.
And the biology behind this is so fascinating to me because we always hear about those reward chemicals in the brain, right? Like what you get from eating chocolate or checking your phone.
Yes, those chemical sparks.
But the way the mind uses that spark here is totally different.
It is much more than just a reward for a job well done. In the context of building your capability, that chemical spark is a biological trigger for learning.
Okay.
When you complete even a tiny, seemingly totally insignificant action successfully, the resulting spark in the brain actually lowers the emotional resistance for the next step.
Oh, wow. So it makes the next step physically easier,
Exactly. It physically alters your motivation. It clears the path.
which powers this whole four-stage loop of competence. Let's walk through the mechanics of this because it's so brilliantly simple when you break it down.
It really is.
So stage one is a small action. And the key here is that it needs to be embarrassingly easy, right?
It has to be so easy that failure is almost impossible.
Like ridiculously easy.
Yes, which leads right into stage two. Small proof. This is crucial. This isn't your friend telling you that you did a good job. This is you personally observing yourself completing the action. Your mind is recording raw, undeniable data.
And that data triggers stage three, which is basically an update to your self-belief. What is the mind actually doing during that update?
It's revising its predictions. The mind is essentially a prediction machine, constantly guessing what you are capable of based on past evidence.
Like an algorithm.
Exactly. When it receives the new data from that small proof, it quietly shifts its internal algorithm. It says, well, the data shows we just survived doing the small task. It is no longer a total unknown.
Which naturally leads to stage four, expanded action. Because your mind's model has been updated, the next step, which is maybe slightly bigger, is noticeably easier to attempt than it would have been an hour ago.
That is the loop in motion. Action, proof, belief update, expanded action.
But I want to push back on this idea of forcing action for a second. Because I always thought motivation was like a wave. You hear people talk about how motivation naturally rises and falls throughout the day.
Very true.
So if we know that motivation peaks organically, why shouldn't we just wait to ride the wave when it naturally arrives? Like, why force a small action when we just aren't feeling it?
That is a very common trap, especially for people who are driven or high achievers. The flaw in waiting for the motivation wave is that it's highly unreliable.
Yeah, that's fair.
It rarely arrives when you are facing a difficult, high-friction task.
Yeah.
We have to look at how action actually creates feelings, not the other way around.
Wait, action creates the feeling?
Yes. There is a whole approach in psychology focused on this. It shows that structured actions taken before someone feels ready actually generate the motivation afterward.
Okay, so you don't wait to feel better to do something. Doing something makes you feel better.
Precisely. It completely reverses our societal assumption that feeling good must precede doing good. Taking the action creates the motivation.
So the action is the engine, not the caboose.
That's a great way to put it. Repeated small wins directly reshape how the mind predicts future outcomes. It wires itself to expect success entirely based on the evidence of you taking action first.
Okay, so if small, intentional actions feed this loop, we have to look at what starves it. Because it feels like modern life is practically engineered to interrupt this sequence.
Oh, without a doubt.
Let's talk about the everyday habits that are quietly destroying our confidence.
Well, scattered attention is a massive culprit. Chronic multitasking.
Like having 50 browser tabs open.
Exactly. It fractures your attention so thoroughly that you rarely finish anything long enough to actually generate that small proof.
Oh, because you never actually cross the finish line on any of them.
Right. If you're always jumping between 5 tabs and 3 projects, the mind never gets the concrete proof of completion. The loop is starved right at stage 1.
And we already touched on that passive scrolling thing where you trick your mind into feeling informed without generating real proof. But I was also amazed to see how sleep affects this.
Oh, sleep is foundational.
Because I wouldn't have immediately connected sleep to confidence.
The connection is in how sleep regulates the logical part of the mind. When you are sleep deprived, the logical planning center of your mind goes partially offline.
Right.
And simultaneously, your brain's threat detection alarm becomes hyperactive.
So your threat response is cranked up while your logic is dialed down. That sounds awful.
It is. And because of this state, the emotional cost of starting anything new feels infinitely higher than it actually is.
So you just freeze?
Exactly. Your mind interprets a simple task as a massive, threatening hurdle. It artificially inflates the barrier to entry, stopping the loop before it even starts.
And then on top of all that, there is the external pressure, like society and workplace culture demanding massive, visible wins right out of the gate.
The pressure to go big or go home.
Yes. Which directly discourages the unglamorous, messy first steps that this loop actually requires.
Which feeds directly into the comparison trap. Many of us spend an hour on our phones comparing our starting point, our stage 0, to someone else's years of accumulated mastery.
Oh, that is so true. We compare our messy drafts to their polished finals.
Yes. The mind registers their polished outcome, compares it to your messy beginning, and updates your belief model negatively. You walk away feeling significantly less capable, even though your actual competence hasn't changed at all.
To make this really tangible, let's look at some ordinary stories of how this plays out. Think about someone who wants to start freelancing. Let's call her Sarah.
Okay, Sarah.
Say she wants to freelance, but she waits for 2 full years because every time she sits down to start, that readiness trap kicks in. She thinks, I need a better portfolio, or I need to take a pricing course first.
All right, 2 years of simulated progress, but no actual proof.
Exactly. But then her loop gets triggered almost by accident. A friend of hers urgently needs a graphic for a project, and Sarah only has 1 hour to do it.
So there was 0 time for preparation.
0. No time to overthink, no time to research another course. She just had to physically make the graphic, and she did.
I bet it wasn't perfect.
No, it wasn't a masterpiece, but her friend used it. And that one tiny, rushed, imperfect piece of direct proof gave her mind the raw data it had been starving for.
It broke the dam.
Yes. Within a year, she used that specific momentum to build a consistent freelance career.
I hear stories like that all the time. Or consider a person wanting to join a local hiking group. Let's call her Jennifer.
Okay.
She felt incredibly intimidated by the idea of showing up alone as a total beginner. If she had tried to jump straight to the big action, driving to the meetup and going on a massive group hike, her threat alarm would have likely kept her home.
So she focused on a much smaller entry point.
Yes. She didn't even commit to the group. She committed to driving to a local trail and walking exactly 1/4 of a mile alone.
Just a 1/4 mile.
And she gave herself absolute permission to turn back at any point. But she did the 1/4 mile, she didn't turn back, and she literally wrote it down as proof. 3 weeks later, she had the self-belief to join the group hike.
But wait, I have to stop and ask a critical question here. These stories are great because the small action ultimately succeeded. But what if you take that very first embarrassingly small step and it is a complete disaster?
The fear of the first failure.
All right, say Jennifer twists her ankle on that first 1/4 mile, or Sarah completely messes up the graphic and her friend rejects it. Doesn't a failure at stage 1 immediately validate all your internal doubt and permanently destroy the loop?
That is the exact fear that keeps so many people paralyzed. But how the mind handles setbacks is really fascinating. How a person interprets a setback matters far more than the setback itself.
What do you mean by how they interpret it?
Well, a resilient mind interprets failure as localized and informative, not global and definitive.
Okay, so it doesn't mean I'm a failure, it just means this thing failed.
Exactly. If you take a small action and it fails, the loop isn't destroyed. The mind simply says, okay, that specific approach yielded negative data. What did we learn for the next small action?
Oh, that's a relief.
Yes. The loop is only destroyed by inaction. Consistency in taking small, messy steps is far more powerful than waiting for perfection in those steps.
One negative data point doesn't crash the whole system. That is huge. So understanding the mechanics of this loop is one thing, but how do we actively force our minds into this sequence tomorrow morning?
That's where we need a playbook.
Right. Because if you are listening to this right now, you might be thinking, sure, a tiny action works for starting a hiking hobby, but I'm trying to pivot my entire career or start a complex business.
The scale doesn't actually change the mechanism.
How does a small step apply to massive, high-stakes life changes?
There are specific strategies to use this loop regardless of the scale of your goal. The first and most crucial is defining the absolute smallest step.
The minimum viable action.
Yes. Before you start anything meaningful, you must ask, what is the absolute smallest physical version of this task that still counts as starting?
Because the physical size of that very first step is one of the strongest predictors of whether a task begins at all, right?
Yes.
If your massive goal is pivoting careers, the smallest step isn't rewrite my entire resume. It is open a blank document and type my name at the top. That's it.
That's it. And you pair that small step with the 20-minute rule.
The 20-minute rule.
You commit to just 20 minutes of the task you are avoiding, with absolute guilt-free permission to quit when the timer sounds.
Because the emotional resistance is highest right before you begin.
Exactly. Once you cross the threshold into motion, that resistance plummets.
Because you are already generating the small proof. Another strategy that blew my mind is clearing the path or removing friction.
Environment preloading, yes.
Right. You intentionally reduce the number of decisions required to begin a task. Think about a parent, let's call him Michael, who wanted to go back to school.
Yeah.
He was a manager, 44 years old, and he was terrified he wouldn't be able to keep up academically.
People get trapped in these calcified habits of thought. His mental pathways around his own perceived inability had probably become so deeply entrenched over a decade that trying to change course felt alarming.
10 years of avoiding it, yes. And then he was helping his daughter fill out an online financial aid form for her college. And navigating that complicated digital system with her generated a tiny spark of proof. He realized he could still handle complex information.
You got the data.
Right. So, to remove friction, he didn't research a whole 4-year degree program and overwhelm himself. He found exactly one community college course, and he filled out the enrollment form the exact moment he found it.
That is brilliant. He acted in the precise window where the proof existed.
Yes.
By removing the friction and acting immediately, he bypassed the confidence deficit entirely. He didn't leave a gap for his mind's alarm system to start generating doubt.
It's a profound example of how reducing friction changes everything. But what if you take the action and your mind just dismisses it as a fluke? What if it refuses to update your self-belief?
That is exactly why many find it useful to write things down. Proof journaling.
Proof journaling.
It forces the mind to log the data. At the end of the day, you write down one small thing you did, despite not feeling fully ready.
So it's not a gratitude journal.
No, and it isn't about, celebrating yourself. You are acting like a scientist collecting raw data. You are explicitly training your mind to notice the evidence of capability that its default negative bias usually ignores.
You are forcing the belief update stage.
Yes, and this ties perfectly into another key strategy: separating your identity from your action.
Oh, this is so important.
When your mind tells you, I am not a confident person, you have to recognize that as a temporary feeling, not an instruction manual for your behavior.
Right. High performers and highly confident people are not defined by an absence of fear or doubt, are they?
Not at all. They experience fear at the exact same levels as everyone else. They have simply practiced acting alongside it. The doubt is just background noise to them. It is not a stop sign.
Which brings us to a concept that ties this entire conversation together beautifully: the confidence lag.
Yes, the lag.
Because the feeling of confidence will almost always arrive slightly after the competence does. And I picture this exactly like streaming a video on a bad internet connection.
Walk us through that analogy. I love that.
So you click play on a video, it pauses, and you get that little spinning buffering wheel on the screen.
Right.
The actual data, the competence, the skill you've just built by taking action has already been downloaded to your device. It is physically there.
Yes.
But the screen, your internal feeling of confidence, just takes a minute to render and catch up to the evidence.
It buffers.
Yes. When you feel capable, but you are still doubting yourself, that lag isn't a red flag telling you to stop. It's just your mind buffering. It's just processing the new evidence.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize the cognitive processing delay. The buffering wheel isn't a system failure.
No.
When you understand the confidence lag, you stop panicking when you don't feel perfectly ready, because you know the feeling is already on its way. You just have to keep providing the data.
Which means we need to fundamentally reframe how we build self-belief. We hear things like consistency beats intensity all the time, but the physical changes in the mind rely on frequency, not volume. A massive, one-time, 10-hour effort doesn't signal to your mind that a new task is safe. But 20 minutes a day for a week literally rewires your mind's threat response to that task.
Confidence is not a permanent trait you were born with. And it isn't something you can research your way into.
No.
It is a biological product that your mind manufactures, but it will only manufacture it after you give it the raw materials. And that raw material is undeniable evidence of action.
So here's our direct challenge to you for today. The next time you catch yourself saying, I just need to look into this a little more before I start, or I'll make the call when I feel a bit more ready, stop.
Stop and recognize it.
Yes. Recognize that you are caught in a mental trap. Close the browser, put down the book, and take one embarrassingly small 20-minute action instead.
Be willing to do it badly.
Exactly. Generate the proof, let the buffering happen, and let the loop begin.
And as we close, I want to leave you with a concept that really demands some self-reflection.
Let's hear it.
We tend to view confidence as a permanent destination. But confidence is highly specific to certain areas of life, and it actually fades without ongoing reinforcement. It's a loop you have to keep running constantly.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought to chew on today. If confidence truly fades without that constant small action reinforcement, what past area of mastery or talent or passion in your own life might have silently faded over the years simply because you stopped taking those small, messy actions?
It happens to the best of us.
It does. And more importantly, what tiny 20-minute step could you take today to wake that loop back up?
These thoughts, these questions, they don't have to stop here. Geeks Mindset has many more podcasts and videos just like this one. Subscribe to the channel and explore other episodes. They all flow the same thoughtful way. If this podcast felt genuinely useful to you, share it with even one person in your life. That one share can bring a real change in someone's life. And it helps Geeks Mindset reach more people who truly need this. If this brought you real value, look for the join button right next to the Geeks Mindset logo below this video. Click it and become a member of the Mindset Support Circle. Your support helps honest mindset awareness reach thousands who are silently struggling. Geeks Mindset moves forward because of you. Thank you so much from the heart for being here.